Oral questions. Questions orales. Honorable Leader of the Opposition, soon to be next Prime Minister of Canada.
The headlines in Quebec again today show that after 9 years, this Prime Minister is not worth the cost of housing, which has doubled in his 9 years tenure. It's a disaster about to happen. Organizations are calling for help. There are renters who are contemplating suicide, soon to be forced to live in their van. These are the headlines. After 9 years, why should Quebecers believe the Prime Minister now? The Honourable Minister of Housing, Infrastructure and Communities. Mr. Speaker, I understand this situation is difficult for renters and people who don't have housing, and that's why the government, after discussion and negotiation, has entered into a deal with Quebec to build affordable housing. With federal officials, 8,000 to 10,000 affordable housing units will be built. The leader of the Conservative Party is opposed. That's not okay. We need to work with our Quebec counterparts to build affordable housing. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. More expensive promises. This Prime Minister is not worth the cost after 9 years. What's worse, the Bloc voted in favor of $500 billion in inflationary centralizing spendings. That's going to cause interest rates to shoot up. Quebecers will lose their homes, and taxpayers will have to pay even more now on debt service than on health care. When will the Prime Minister recognize that he and the Bloc are not worth the cost?
Absolutely not.
Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker, we have a plan to build more housing more quickly, but the Conservatives voted against it. We have a plan for a green industrial transition, but the Conservatives voted against it. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to share some big news that Canadians got last week, and that is that our credit rating, our AAA
credit rating, there it is.
The highest possible credit rating. Canada still has that because of our budget policy. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
The Minister is not worth the crime, chaos, drugs, and disorder. It has now been 10 days and 60 dead British Columbians since the government of that province has asked the Prime Minister to reverse his deadly and radical legalization of crack, heroin, and other hard drugs in children's parks, hospitals, on transit. Why will he not reverse his radical agenda?
Because he wants everyone sucking at the teat of the government.
The Honourable Minister for Mental Addictions and Health.
Mr. Speaker, communities in BC are facing an extremely serious challenge. It is a toxic drug supply on the streets, and people are dying.
That you guys caused?
We know that public consumption is an issue of concern, which is exactly why, Mr. Speaker, BC is amending their proposal, and we have been working with them every step of the way. We're treating this with the urgency it deserves, and all partners are at the table right now, Mr. Speaker, to find the path forward, working with law enforcement and health services so that we get this right and save lives, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, to find a path forward, the path forward is obvious. Ban hard drugs. Invest in treatment. Bring our loved ones home drug-free. Now, that minister claimed last week that she was waiting for the BC government to provide information before she could decide on reversing radical legalization. It turns out the government had given her that information within hours of the request. She has all the information, so why are her and her radical boss clinging on to this insane policy?
Oh, wow.
The Honourable Minister for Mental Health and Addictions.
Mr. Speaker, on this side of the House, we follow science, we follow healthcare experts, and we follow the information. We are working with BC on a comprehensive amendment to their proposal. This takes collaborative work, Mr. Speaker, to get it right. This is a health issue, Mr. Speaker, not a criminal one. The Leader of the Opposition is misleading Canadians in not recognizing that people need health care. They do not need to be re-stigmatized and criminalized.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the Abbotsford Soccer Association wrote a letter entitled "A Cry for Change." Volunteers with the organization have found dirty needles that can puncture innocent children in the playing field. Other BC fields have had women raped and overdose, have found addicts naked, have had pets actually overdose because there's so much drug contamination on the site. What are they thinking over there?
The Honourable Minister of Finance and Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, a pilot project was put in place at BC's request. BC now has serious concerns about some aspects of that. We share those concerns and we are addressing them. But I do want to say, Mr. Speaker, I do not think there is a family in Canada that is untouched by the tragedy of opioids. And I think that it is absolutely abhorrent to try to score political points off the pain of Canadians.
Oh my God.
Speaker, our government will always uphold the Charter of Rights and Freedoms to protect Canadians' rights. We even established a rule in 2019 that every government bill must be accompanied by a charter statement to ensure that Canadians' rights are respected in all legislation. Last week, the Leader of the Opposition admitted that he would overrule Canadians' rights using the notwithstanding clause. Can the Minister of Justice please reaffirm our government's commitment to upholding the Charter?
The Honourable Minister of Justice and Attorney General for Canada.
I thank the member for the question. I will state that our government will stop at nothing to ensure that Canadians' charter-guaranteed rights and freedoms are protected. You cannot claim to care about freedom and then vow to strip certain people's freedoms away when it is politically inconvenient.
Bro.
That is not democracy, Mr.
What?
The opposition has said they'll start with criminal justice matters, but where will they stop? Religious rights, abortion rights, the rights of the LGBTQ2 community? Our government will always protect all Canadians' rights. It's a wake-up call that the Leader of the Opposition cannot and will not do the same.
What the hell just happened? What the hell just happened, bro? I want to call the police on him. It should be a crime to gaslight that much. Did we just get gaslit? Am I losing my mind? What the actual fuck did he just say? I feel like I'm going nuts. I feel like I'm going nuts. That's insane. That should be a crime. That should be criminal to gaslight that hard.